Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Adit. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And if you find my videos really interesting, then please share with your friends, family, colleagues, and everyone as much as possible. Now, if you have read the title of this video, you might be surprised that if I'm going to talk about computers suddenly today, because in last or the second last video I had told you that we are going to discuss about different topics related to mental health, and now you are wondering, or you might be wondering, that am I going to talk about the computers, because this term default settings or restore to default settings is applicable to computers as far as we know, right? But don't worry, I'm not going to talk about computers because I'm not a computer expert. Of course, I'm going to talk about today how this term restore to default settings can be applied, or at times I would say should be applied, to our mind and to our thought process. Now, you might have uh, heard this term restore to default settings. There is a button in our computer, there is an option restore to default. Now, what happens is when our computer, malfunctions at times, then we try to repair it by some or the other way. Sometimes we are successful in repairing it. Sometimes, if we are not successful, then we take it to a computer engineer or a computer repair shop. It might be a computer or a laptop, whatever it is. And then that expert or that engineer tries to do something from his side. Sometimes he is successful. Sometimes that person, even though he is an expert, is not successful. And then what he advises us is that you restore the settings to default. So basically what happens here is when we click that option of restore to default, all the settings of the computer or the laptop, they are restored to the original settings which were in place when we had purchased that computer or laptop. So all the settings or all the changes which we made after we purchased that computer or laptop are nullified completely. So you might be wondering how we can apply this for our mental health or in our life. So I will explain that to you in very simple terms. So sometimes what happens is when we are grown up as adults and we are now navigating through our life in our own way, many a times it happens that we are faced with some challenging situations, difficult situations, and then sometimes we are able to overcome them successfully, but at times we are not able to find a solution to those situations. How much ever we try, how much ever we endeavor from our side, we are not able to succeed some or the other way. So we wonder why it is happening, or why am I finding it so difficult to overcome this particular situation. So it has been found out that most many times the reason behind this difficulty in navigating our life through such challenging situations is that we are trying to resolve those situations, or we are trying to think or behave in those situations in an artificial way. When I say artificial way, I'm not saying we are doing it deliberately, or we are intentionally behaving in an artificial way. What I mean is that we are behaving or thinking in a way which is not indigenous to us, or which is not original to us, which is not in accordance with the nature, original nature, or the thinking with which we were born, right? Because all of you, as you know, we all of us are born with some original nature, with some original virtues, some qualities. So, as children, we are constantly observing the behavior or the way of thinking of the people around us. They might be our parents, our family members, relatives, friends, seniors, society members. It can be anyone. And as children, when we are observing their behaviors or their thinking, sometimes we tend to absorb their way of thinking or behavior as our own. Sometimes it might happen automatically, but many a times we are forced to adopt those behaviors or those opinions or those way of thinking or those thought patterns as our own. So as we grow old, slowly we start believing that these externally induced thinking patterns are not externally induced, but they are our own. and this is called as psychological conditioning. We are conditioned to believe, or we are conditioned to think that something which is not ours, it can maybe a thought process, or it may be an opinion, or a belief, or a way of thinking, or a point of view, or a way of looking at a particular situation, a way of dealing with a particular situation. It might be a quality, a virtue, a nature, anything. So anything which is not ours, but which we start believing because of this conditioning process as our own, it is called as psychological conditioning, basically. So sometimes, some changes in our behavior or our thinking patterns which we adopt from these external stimuli, they might be good. I'm not saying all the changes are bad. Some of the changes or some of the qualities which we get or which we receive from the other people, they might be good. So there is no harm in continuing with those policies. But sometimes these externally induced thinking patterns, which I called previously as artificial patterns or artificial behaviors, they might lead to a lot of psychological distress or at times psychological trauma, because they lead us into at times many problematic situations from which we don't know how to get out, and we are led into those situations only because we are behaving or thinking in a way which is not ours originally. We are trying to do something which we are not actually. We are trying to do something artificially, and then of course because of that we are not able to succeed in that, and therefore we land up into more troubles, or we are not able to get out of the problematic situations that might happen at times. So that's why if we find ourselves in such a situation, then the best way to deal with that issue is, rather than finding different ways, more and more ways externally, we can find out the most effective way internally, that is restore to default. Now, when I say restore to default, what I mean is most of us, we very well remember how we were as children, right? I mean, when we were, say, 6 years old, 7 year old, 8 year old, 10 year old, 15 year old, how we were as children, how we used to think, how we used to, handle some situations. So mostly we know how we were as children. We may not remember everything, but majority part of our childhood, we still remember, right? And so, if we think that whatever quality we had or whatever our way of thinking was at that time was better than what it is right now, then we can reset ourselves, we can reset our brain, we can rewire our thinking to that original way of thinking or to that original setting inside our brain. Of course, it is not easy, it is difficult, and it will take time, it will take a lot of efforts to do that, because we have been conditioned to think in a particular way for almost 20-25 years, and now suddenly if we want to go back to that setting of our mind, then it's going to be difficult and it's going to take some time. It's not going to be as easy as it is with the computers. You just click one button, restore to default, and then everything vanishes. It is not as easy with our mind, but then it is possible. It may be difficult, but it is possible. And as I said, that all the changes are not bad. Some of the changes which we might have inculcated during our childhood may be good, and so we may continue with them. I'm not saying you abandon everything whatever you have learned, but if you feel that some of the changes in your thinking patterns were brought about by the forced conditioning from the society, and those changes are now leading to psychological distress or some psychological problems, or they are now leading you into the some problematic situations which was otherwise avoidable, then you can 100% opt for this option of restoring yourself to default. Like, you can try to start slowly behaving or thinking in your indigenous original way. Initially it might sound very alien, as if you are doing something very much wrong, but if you have thought about it carefully, if it's a thoughtful decision, and if you are sure that what you were doing or what your way of thinking was then is much better and much we can say beneficial compared to what your way is right now, you can certainly go for that. And it works. If you do it properly and thoughtfully, it works miraculously. I have tried it a couple of times, and initially I found it difficult, but then later on I found out that my life has become much easier when I've started behaving or being the way I am originally. The virtues or the thinking patterns, thought patterns with which I was born. So yes, you can, if you find yourself in difficult situations and then there is no way out, and if you feel that this psychological conditioning is responsible for that particular issue or that particular psychological distress, you can restore your mind to default. Bye bye, good night, take care, God bless you all.